So hi, thank you everyone for coming today, and thank you for the people who are online for joining us. Let me start with just introducing myself first. I'm Patricia Ramallo. I'm part of the Experience and Education team at NCARB. I am a licensed architect. Actually, I'm from Argentina, so I first got licensed there. That's where the accent comes from. And then I moved to the US and decided to do it all over again because I loved it. And I have a license in Kentucky and another one in New Jersey. I practiced architecture for about 14 years before joining NCARB. I was doing a little bit of everything, working usually smaller size firm. I did multifamily, residential, commercial, mixed use. Wherever I could get my hands on something, I was there. So I joined NCARB about 3 years ago, and that's what brings me here. I have a really fantastic job traveling around schools and talking to students and people. And I do have one rule for my presentations. I don't like being the only one talking. So I'm going to be asking questions, and I'm not going to move on until somebody answers. So I hope you have time or answers, one of the two. And for the people online, feel free to send your answers as well, because we want to hear from you. So here goes the first one. Why architecture? Simple question, no wrong answer. Why are you here and not in law school? Somewhere else. What brought you here? You look like you have an answer. No?
I do.
Care to share?
I guess I'm in love with many art disciplines, and I thought architecture is right.
You're good.
I guess I like art and many of its disciplines, and I thought architecture it's an art that gathers many of them. So that's why I'm here.
That's a really good reason. Anyone else? One more person at least. Okay, I can point at somebody, so hi.
I picked architecture because I find it's a really interesting way to change somebody's mind through subconscious. And, well, a building can do a lot to somebody and how it affects them. And I found that really interesting, and I want to learn more about it.
That's wonderful, yes. We can do so much. We have this power, and it's good that we're here to figure out how to. So my story, it's very similar to what you were saying, actually. I come from a family of architects. I was 5 years old, and I was in site visits just for fun. But I fought it. I actually started going to our architectural school, but then I switched to business, to graphic design, engineering. School is free in Argentina, I mean, you can tell. So after doing all that, I just decided to go back to architecture when I realized, after a while, that my parents were right, and with architecture you can do anything. If you want to run a business, you can do that side. If you want to be technical, you can do specs, and if you want to design the next museum, you can do that as well. So it's a wonderful profession. I am a little bit biased on that. So how to become an architect? You need three key components, three key things. Education, experience, and examination. I'll go in depth into each of those in a second. But before that, another question for you guys. This time you just need to raise your hand, so don't worry about it. Anonymity. When do you think you can call yourself an architect? First one, let's see. I'm going to go one by one, just raise your hand. You don't need to be sure, just tell me. After you graduate, so you're done with school, you're done here, you're an architect, you're ready to start, is that right? Nope? Okay. Once you have a job in the field, you're already working, designing buildings. Nope. When I passed the exam, you passed all the exams, you have completed all your experience, you're done, right? No? Can somebody tell me when then?
The second one?
Second option? So after you have a job in the field, you can call yourself an architect? That's your... Thank you. That's a great point to bring me to, I'm sorry, yes, you're wrong. But the reason you can call yourself an architect after you have a license. And there is a reason why licensing boards restrict the title. Yes, if you're a party, nobody's going to go after you if you tell somebody there that you are an architect or went to architecture school. But if you're offering services as an architect, that is when you can get into trouble. And I know the California board is really good at tracking people down. So there's a good reason. The job of the licensing board is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So how can the public know if you are competent or not to do your job if everyone goes around calling themselves architects? So, for example, last time you went to a doctor, how did you know the doctor was licensed? The name, and they have an MD sometimes. So you assume that if they have an MD after the name, they are competent. That is the same reason for architecture. If you go around calling yourself an architect and haven't proven that you're competent, there's no line to define how can the board protect the public. That is why. It's not them just trying to be mean. They have a really good reason behind it. So we get to, great, you can only call yourself an architect after you're licensed, but why go through the process? Why get licensed? One person, who wants to get licensed here? Okay, most of you. There's probably a reason for it. So you can call yourself an architect. Wonderful. It feels good. I can tell you. Anyone else? Let's see. I'm sorry.
After training, and we become more professional, and are licensed. That's why we're more professional than who call themselves without license. We might call them designer, but not architects, right?
Yes. So, marketing purposes, you get more jobs. You have that respect that comes after calling yourself, being able to call yourself an architect. And I don't know, but if you watch movies, the architect is usually the good guy. There must be a reason for that. What else? Who likes having a boss? Nobody. So, in my opinion, that's the best benefit of. You do? You like? You're like, good. So, yes, that's good. I do like mine too, and I'm licensed. It's just that I do have that option to open up my own firm if I ever want to change my mind and go back to architecture. So, being able to be your own boss, have your own firm, marketability, more money. That's another good reason. So there are many reasons. The reasons are personal, but I'm just here to guide you if you're interested to get your license. So I'm here and I said I'm from NCARB. NCARB is the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. Very long name to say several times a day, but who are we? We are the ones who work with the licensing boards from each jurisdiction to facilitate the process of licensure. We develop the programs and we manage them, the ones you have to go through to become an architect. And we also develop model law that we suggest to the licensing boards, and they have the option on whether to take it or not, because we have states' rights here, and each licensing board, it's able to set their own requirements for licensure. So basically, in the U.S., we have 55 jurisdictions that are are members of NCARB, and they have their own ways and their own requirements to issue a license. I said 55, and that's the 50 states of the U.S., Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands, D.C., and Northern Mariana Islands. The good news about that is that if you ever want to get a license in one of those areas, let's say Puerto Rico, you have a way of getting it through the reciprocity and through NCARB. So NCARB has several resources to help you through the process, because it can be complicated to keep in mind the 55 ways of getting a license. I don't know them all. So we have resources. This is a good website link to remember. All the information I say here and a lot more is right there. We also have a link that I'm going to show you in a couple of slides to be able to figure out what requirements has the jurisdiction where you want to get licensed. So how to get started? The first step towards licensure is going to be to start your NCARB record. Who has an NCARB record already? Nobody? Okay. So this is how you do it when you are ready. It's you go to our website, you click on login, and you're going to they are going to ask you a lot of questions about your name, where you went to school, email address, a lot of information, and they are going to ask for a fee. It's $100 application fee, and that covers the first year of your record. After that, you're going to have an $85 annual renewal fee. So that's why at the beginning I said when you're ready. So when you're ready to start the process towards licensure, when you're ready, when you have experience that you want to document, the process to document your experience and also to take your exams, you will need an NCARB record. So now we go into how to get your license. You are working on your education. That is a big part. Having a degree from a NAB accredited program, that is going to facilitate getting licenses around the country. There are currently 16 states that will allow you to get a license without a NAB accredited degree, but the rest is going to be either time consuming or just not possible because the limitations for those without a NAB accredited degree, there are many limitations around the country. But in California, you can. By the way, do you know what NAB is? No? Okay, so let's start there. No? So NAB is the National Architectural Accrediting Board, and they are the ones who are in charge of making sure that the education meets a certain standard. So they evaluate the programs and they accredit them or not. Here you have the master's degree, right? That is accredited. Good. But just keep in mind the program is the one that is accredited and not the whole school. Then we get to the experience component. It's documented through the Architectural Experience Program, and I'll talk in depth about that in a second. And we have the examination, which right now we have the ARE, the Architect Registration Examination, the 5.0 version. So, where do you plan to work? Is everyone staying here in California? Are you planning to move somewhere else across the country, New York? Maybe. So this question is just to make you think a little bit about licensure. You don't have to get licensed in the place where you go to school, or not even where you work. However, you do need a license wherever you have a project or where you're trying to practice architecture, even by offering your services as an architect. So if you are working here wonderfully and you have a license to practice here, you're all set. But then you have a client who loves your work and they want you to build their house or design an office building in Florida. In that case, you will need to get a license in Florida as well. So you have to plan ahead. You have to plan ahead, but you also have this thing that is every licensing board has different requirements, and we have 55 ways of getting a license in the US. So this is a tool in our website. It's called a Licensing Requirements Tool, and that's a short link for it. And you can go to there. You're going to see a map. You're going to click at whatever state you're considering to get your license. And on the left side is going to show you the requirements for that state. Kind of a handy tool. Once you go here, this information is updated once a year. So if any changes happen in between, sometimes it's not fully up to date. So we do recommend that you call the licensing board to make sure that you are in the right path. At the bottom of these, you're going to find there's more information there, and you're going to have the contact information for the licensing board. So just as a basic information for California, they require, of course, education, experience, and exams. For education, they have, as I mentioned before, they do have the ability to complete this part without the NAB accredited degree. Keep in mind you're limited, but in other areas, but here you can. They do require additional experience to be able to fulfill this requirement. So there are multiple paths. You can have your NAB accredited degree, or you can have additional experience. For the AXP, they require that you complete it, and for the exams, you have to take them all, pass them all. And this is the contact information for the licensing board if you need it. I think we already went in depth with the education. Do you have any questions about education? Yes?
No, not about the education.
Okay.
Sorry.
I know.
Once you have a license from a state, let's say, is it easier to get a license from another, or do you have to go to?
So the question is, once you have a license to practice in one state, how easy or difficult it is to get it somewhere else. If you have the NAB accredited degree, have fulfilled AXP and the exam, as long as you meet the requirements for that state where you're trying to get to, it is pretty easy. Here in California, you do have an extra exam. So, for example, if I am not licensed here, but I'm licensed in Kentucky and trying to get here, I would have to take that supplemental exam. And that's what I mean by meeting the requirements of the state. But in general, just to tell you my example, I was licensed in Kentucky. I already met the requirements for New Jersey and I needed a license there. So I just called NCARB, asked them to send all my information to New Jersey. I paid the fees, and I got my license in a short while. So once you meet the requirements, it's pretty easy. So we get to the architectural experience program. For those of you who started early, this is what took place of the IDP, the intern development program. This is where you can document, it gives you a guide to document your experience for the licensing boards. And it's all about competency. It was based in the 2012 practice analysis survey. Back then, we asked architects from across the country, what do you think a person who wants to practice architecture needs to know to practice architecture competently and independently? So those are kind of two key things. You need to be minimally competent to practice architecture, and you need to be able to practice it by yourself, because although architecture is a group, or it's a team sport, but we are ultimately the ones responsible for the work. Based on that program, on the answers to the survey, we came up with 96 tasks that you need to be competent at to be able to practice architecture. You can gain the experience and the knowledge in those tasks by working in different settings. Experience setting A, it's the most basic, and I'm sure you already know it. Who wants to guess? Where can you work to get some experience? Architectural studio, a firm. And who do you think has to be your supervisor? An architect, yes. So this one is the one that everyone knows. It's working for an architect licensed in the US or Canada in a firm that is lawfully practicing architecture. Pretty straightforward. Only thing to remember is you have to be paid. Why? Please, I do need an answer to that one. What? It's the law, yes. Your experience needs to meet federal, local, and state regulations. Other reasons? Nobody has bills around here? No?
You starve otherwise.
You starve. Yes, you have bills. You are trained. You came to school, worked really hard, paid for school. You are providing a service to your boss. They are making money off you. So I think it's fair to request payment. For NCARB, it's correct. It's the law, so we need to make sure that everything is correct. But at your end, just make sure you're being fairly treated.
Just had a question. What is it's an internship?
Internship. So if it's paid, it doesn't matter what it's called. But if it's paid with an architect who is your supervisor in a firm, that is fine. Yes.
So, like, I am able to live here with a student visa,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not allowed to work until I have a job.
Yes, for international students, I know visas are a limitation. Depending on the type of visa, you may be allowed to work a certain amount of time or not. So it's very, it depends, but.
Services that help you with that, but we don't recommend it until
Would you like to just
yeah.
so people online?
For international students, and again,
There could be a country or something that I'm not aware of because things are changing, but in general, you are each working towards a degree that has a certain amount of expertise involved, and you are allowed to get an internship under a CPT program. Our International Student Services Department has to help you. There is paperwork that you have to fill out so that you meet the requirements, and your job offer, I have to review it. But it's pretty streamlined in general. We can do it in about a week or week and a half. And it allows students to work for increments of time, a semester or part of a summer, most of a summer, in an internship situation. And then after you graduate, you go into OPT, which allows you to stay in the United States and gain more experience. And so through your education here, you are technically eligible, but we don't recommend it until you've actually accrued a certain amount of education so that you can make the best of that. And we require that you're paid as well. And I don't personally encourage it to be that you take an internship for credit. I think you should get your education for your tuition dollars and getting your experience in your internship setting. But I can help you. Samina can help you. So if anybody has questions about that, that's why I'm here.
Excellent. That's good for all the students to know that you have support for them. So, but it's also an excellent segue for my next slide, because everyone has to complete the experience component. Everyone has to work for an architect at some point, and at least half of the program, or more or less half of the program, has to be working for an architect license in the U.S. or Canada in a firm. However, there are other opportunities to work on the remaining, or to gain the experience in addition to working with the architect. And this could be something that especially international students can take advantage of, because not all of these opportunities here require payment. So some volunteer experience is included here as well. So first I'm going to cover the ones that do require payment. And those are, for example, working under other licensed professionals. That is working for a licensed engineer, landscape architect, even an architect who is not working in a firm. Maybe they are doing sustainable design consulting or lighting design, anything that is not at a firm, that could be covered. And my personal favorite is working for a foreign architect. If at some point you go abroad and you work for an architect abroad, and they are licensed in that country, if you're working in an architectural firm, you can use that experience. Under this opportunity, you can do the other half, because it's approximately half of the program that allows you to be done under this part. Other opportunities would be design and construction related employment. In this one, it would be anything related to design or construction, and it doesn't require an architect to be your supervisor. So, for example, if you're working at IKEA designing kitchens, or if you're working in a construction company doing construction estimates, all that experience can be documented under that opportunity. Then let's go down here, and it says construction work. Construction work would be hands-on construction work, installing flooring, roofing, anything that you're doing in a construction site and you're learning and is helpful for your future as an architect. That could be counted. In this case, you don't need an architect to sign off either. It would be whoever is an expert at what you're doing. You have questions? No? Okay. Then you have some of the non-paid, so you can take advantage of these, and it doesn't require to be employment. It would be community-based design center. This is a volunteer opportunity. It would be volunteering for a non-profit organization that we have previously pre-approved, and we do that to make sure that it's a non-profit, because you're not going to be paid. We just want to make sure everything is okay. We have them listed in our website, and you can choose any of them and document a certain amount of hours. It's a limited amount of hours, but it's at least something that you can do without getting paid. If you know of a non-profit organization that is not in our list, have them contact us, because we can add them. If they meet all the requirements, we can add them to our list. If you happen to have a Freedom by Design program here, that experience can also be counted towards AXP. Then you have design competitions. That's another non-employment opportunity. You will need a supervisor who is an architect. They can mentor you during this development of the design competition. It has to be submitted, and it cannot receive credit for school. So if all that is met, you can count that towards AXP. You have professional conduct monograph. That's it's a monograph. It's kind of a long reading that you can go over it, take a quiz. If you pass the quiz, you can get experience. It's an area that is called practice management. And you have site visit with a mentor. That is, if an architect is willing to take you to a construction site, show you around, show you drawings, maybe to the point where you can learn something. That can be counted towards AXP as well. It's not a drive-by. It has to be the learning opportunity. And with AAA, if any of you attend an AAA event or class where that it's approved for learning units that are HSW, Health, Safety, and Welfare, that can be counted to also. Any questions about those opportunities before I move on? Anything online? Nope. Okay.
There's one question online.
Okay.
Which we might cover later, but they're asking if experience in school can be completed simultaneously.
Thank you. Yes, actually, AXP, you can start working on AXP right after completing high school. So all of you are eligible to start working on it. Yes. However, I think there's like one state. It's always good checking. To complete AXP, I encourage go ahead after high school, start counting. But there are a few states that have an additional layer. I think, for example, Washington, and I would need to check in detail, but Washington has a requirement of at when you can start counting it that is a little bit above that. But in general, having AXP completed, then you can add the rest for the specific states. So what you're seeing here, it's the detail of the AXP program. And those tasks that I mentioned at the beginning, the 96 tasks, are grouped into experience areas. And if you can see here, the name of those experience areas are what you do at your office. It's how to run a firm, how to run a project, and the phases of a project. The tasks here, it tells you how many tasks are associated with that experience area, and it tells you the minimum amount of hours for that experience area, but it doesn't tell you how many hours per task. And that's on purpose, because this program recognizes that not everyone learns at the same pace. What takes you 3 hours to learn it may take you 6. And we don't know about your competency. Your supervisor and you are the only ones that can determine that. Again, it's about competency, competent hours, and not really the same as your timesheet. Very rarely, your timesheet at work is going to match exactly your experience report. There are many things that we do every day that don't count, but most of them will, so don't worry about it. I don't know if I said it already, but to complete AXP, you need 3,740 hours. And this is a good example on how the different jurisdictions have different requirements. Because we said AXP is 3,740 hours, and all those states in blue require the completion of AXP. You complete that, you're done with the experience component. However, those that are in gray here require the completion of AXP and an additional 1,860 hours. So I was talking about Washington, they require additional experience. Just keep in mind that the total sum would be 5,600 hours. My suggestion, even if you're done with AXP and maybe California doesn't require any additional experience, keep documenting that experience until you hit 5,600 so you're ready. If you ever have a project in Washington or Kansas, you can just request a license in that place without having to go back and document additional experience. And then we have the states that have a hatch, and those, they require a certain amount of time to be completed as in experience. So it doesn't matter how short or how little time it took you to complete AXP, you have to work for a certain amount of time. Could be 2 or 3 years. Each state has a different requirement. Questions? No. Okay. This is an important slide if you remember one thing. It's once you're documenting, actively documenting, remember to do it often. Anything that you have done from today to 8 months back, so in the past 8 months, counts for 100% of the credit. Anything that it's older than 8 months and up to 5 years only gets 50% of the credit. And anything that it's older than 5 years doesn't get any credit. So document often. That's another conversation you can have with your supervisor, how often it's good enough for you. But do it often and don't forget. AXP, it's your opportunity to learn all those things that you need to know before becoming an architect. That's an important step. So it's not just another thing that you need to do. It's really important. It's where you learn everything. So advocate for yourself. Try to find those opportunities, and don't forget to document them, because you're going to be missing out. The reason for this, I always like giving the reason for things, but it's pretty simple. Do you remember what you had for breakfast this morning? Yes? Do you remember what you had for breakfast exactly a year ago? No? You think your supervisor is going to remember what you had for breakfast? No. So don't miss out, because you're not going to remember. Even if you try to go back a year ago, you're not going to remember exactly what you did for 15 minutes in one day a year ago. So you're the one missing out. And we get to how to document. You can use your computer, you log in, you have a nice summary of where you are, and you document. You start with report my experience, and it walks you through it. It's pretty simple. Or you can also use the AXP app. So you have it in your phone. This one is helpful to have a conversation with your boss when you're trying to gain more experience in certain areas. For example, here, if I were this person, I would sit down with my boss and say, hey, I need more practice management. How can I get that experience? And you can just show them your phone and talk about opportunities for you. And these are the very handy AXP guidelines. All the rules about AXP are right here. All those opportunities that I mentioned, they're a little bit different than the working with an architect in a firm. They're all detailed here. You can download this from our website. And yes, or you can Google AXP guidelines and they'll come up as well. But I encourage you to go to the website. We have a second here, break. Let's breathe. Any questions about AXP before I move on? No? Yes?
If you can experience count towards two different areas.
Can experience count towards two different areas? Not really, because you're going to have the 6 experience areas and you are going to be the one determining where to document it. And in the guidelines, you're going to find the definition of the experience areas and the tasks under it. So each task is taken into account from the point of view of that experience area. So if you're doing something that matches what that task is within the environment that is described for that experience area, that's where it would fall. You didn't look convinced. No. Okay. And it will explain itself after you look at the guidelines. It's pretty easy to follow. Who has ever seen the guidelines here? Nobody? It's a good Google search for you guys. Homework. So we get to the exam. I don't know, is anyone scared of this part? No? The exams? Yes? Okay, I was. I mean, I have to say, I was. This was the scary part for me. My suggestion, try to do them as early as you can because you get them out of the way. They are scary, and this is all personal. The scariest part for me was getting the first appointment, just scheduling my first exam. And because, I don't know, it took me 6 months to just to sit down and schedule my exam. I was afraid of that part. Once I paid for it, I guess I do take care of my money very well because as soon as I scheduled it, I sat down and started studying like crazy. And I showed up and somehow I passed it. Well, not going to talk about that. Somehow a miracle happened and I passed it. And then I just went for the next one and the next one. don't stop. Once you start, don't stop, because it's really difficult to get back to it. After school, I wish I had done it that way, because you're already kind of used to studying. I know you're tired, but you're used to studying. Then life gets in the way. You have kids and you have a full-time job, and things keep coming up. The good news is that it's one exam. It has 6 parts, but it's 6 divisions, but it's one exam that you only take once. Once you pass it, you don't have to take it again for any state. There are a few states that have additional requirements for the examination component, like California, where you have your supplemental exam that you can take after you are done with ARE. I believe Alaska also has some requirement about permafrost, or certain specific details for each state. I know Washington and Virginia, they have like an pop quiz or one-page multiple choice open book quiz about the rules and regulations, because they want you to take a look at those before getting a license. But this is the core of it, and once you pass it, you don't have to do it again. If you were paying attention to my previous slide, you're going to see that the titles, or so the labels here, happen to match AXP exactly. On purpose, because we wanted your experience and your exams to align. You have the number of items, and all this is in our website. How many items, so questions, different types of questions that you're going to get, and how much time is allowed for your exam. The way the information is distributed here, it's a little bit different than maybe what you did in high school. You don't sit down, you don't study for structures and sit down and take a structures exam. The way the information is organized, it's exactly what happens in your firm. You don't meet the first day with your client and discuss the size of a bean in a project that you don't even know what it is. You first start talking about the project, of course, what they want, what they need. And then you start discussing different types of structures, the price. So that might be covered in programming and analysis. And by the time you get to the size of the beam, that would be project development and documentation. So depending on the phase of the project, the type of information you're going to be asked. We do have a lot of resources to help you through the exam. We have the ARE guidelines. There you're going to find all the policies for the exam. How to reschedule, what the type of identification you need, how to schedule your exam, security. When you get to the testing center, you'll have to go through security. So all that is explained in the guidelines. Then you have the ARE 5.0 handbook. In that one, you're going to find explanation of what each exam is testing, and the books where the questions come from. We are at NCARB, we don't develop the NCARB staff doesn't develop the exam questions. We have volunteers who are architects, and they use a lot of books, and every question they develop, the answers have to be in those books. And you have the list of books listed in the ARE handbook. We also have a video prep series. The examination staff put together some videos to help you through the exam. And we have the ARE 5.0 community that is accessible from your NCARB record. And there you can log in and talk to other people who are studying for the test, and they can help you with motivation or with some tips on how to approach the exam. Another good resource for the exam is once you have your NCARB record, you're going to be able to access the ARE 5.0 demo. It's a demo that shows you exactly the same screen that you would see at the testing center if you have a 23-inch monitor. It has 20 sample questions. You can go through them. You can see what resources you have available. It's not always the same resources for each division, but at least you know how to use it. You know there's a break button that you have to press whenever you want to take your 15-minute break. So just to get used to how the environment and the interface works. Questions about the exam? Yes.
What happens if you fail one of the 6? How often can you?
So if you fail one of the exams, you can schedule the next one right away, but you have to wait at least 60 days to be able to retake it. You do have to pay again for the exam. So you'll get your fail score. You can go in immediately and reschedule it, just a 60-day waiting period. And if you happen to fail it again, you can take the same division up to 3 times per running calendar year. So from your first fail in a year and then the second, so it's not the calendar year, it's the running calendar. I think that covers, yes, that's covered. No, you're not able to see what you did wrong because it's a professional exam and we have a limited number of questions, so you cannot see the right answer for each question. But we do give you a score report. So you'll get a page that says you failed, but the next page on the back is going to have the areas that you were tested in and how you did. And you actually have like 4 levels telling you whether you did really poorly or you did not meet expectations, or even if you passed, it tells you if you barely pass or if you know that content and you're good. That helps you to study next time you sit down to study for that one. The exam, you can take the exam anywhere. So even if you're trying to get a license here, if you want to go to Florida to take your exams and then come back and have a license here, that is fine. You don't have to take the exam in the same place where you're trying to get your license. We have some international locations. So if you're very interested in taking your exam in London while on vacation, let's go for it. I think we also have some locations in Argentina, Brazil, Hong Kong. There are a few. So if you're interested, there's in our website, you have more information. Yes. Yes.
I'm guessing we have access to them, we can purchase them. And is this something that you recommend, like just start early on, like reading them?
They are really good books. I had several of them already in my library by the time I started studying. So yes, I do suggest those books as good reference. My other suggestion would be to go to the ARE 5.0 community and ask other people what books they're using. There's several companies that have study guides, kind of an abbreviated version of the books. So it really depends on your approach to studying. I personally used a mix. I used the study guides, but I reinforced the content since I already had some of the books, by using those books. The people in the ARE 5.0 community can tell you, well, you probably need this one. There are a few ones that everybody's reading. So that would be a good place to start, the ARE 5.0 community.
If you stay in San Francisco, the AIA San Francisco runs study groups and challenges where you sign up to take all the exams over a 1-year period, and they put you in groups with people and you can study together. And that's a really good motivator and resource, and you can share resources too.
Yes, thanks for reminding me that several AIA chapters even lend you the books if you're interested. And study groups, depending on your study style, can be very helpful. No more questions about the exam? Nothing online? Yes.
But it's about experience.
Okay, go ahead. It's fine.
I'll go for it. It says, I work for my family's design and build company. I did all of the drawing and make all of the corrections from the building department. Can I get experience this way?
I actually need a little bit more information. Yes, if it's a paid employment, if it's a real employment paid, where that experience would be documented would depend on whether the person who is supervising, it's an architect or not. And just as a reminder, the supervision requirement, the person has to have, your supervisor has to have control and knowledge over your work. And that means they know what you're doing, they know whether you're competent or not, and trust me, your supervisor knows whether you're competent or not. And they have to have control of your work. They have to be the ones determining whether you're going to be working in project A or project B. Or they have to have the right to tell you that is wrong and you need to do it all over again. Hopefully they'll explain and walk you through the changes, but they have to have control and knowledge over the work. They don't have to sit down right next to you the whole time. So it's not that type of direct supervision. But even if it's remote or if it's in the same office, it has the key component is control and knowledge over the work. Anything else? Nope. Okay, so we're almost at the end. I do want to remind you, once you get your license here in California, you have completed your NAB accredited degree, you have completed the experience component, your exams, in this case, the supplemental exam as well. You get your first license, and you can get an NCARB certificate if you meet the eligibility. And the NCARB certificate, it's a way to facilitate licensure around the country. It makes it easier to get those licenses in other places. It also gives you the opportunity to have continuing education. It's already included in your fee. It's free, so you can take advantage of that. And we are working on international reciprocity opportunities. So once you have an NCARB certificate, opportunities for you as an architect to get a licensure somewhere else. For example, right now we have agreements with Mexico, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. So we are working on it. So to finalize, we are in every social media outlet that I can imagine. I am not the expert, but there is somebody who's really good, an expert on social media, and they can answer all your questions and comments. So please post. This is the address to the ARE 5.0 community, or you can go through your NCARB record. That's a really good resource. And finally, as next steps, start your record whenever you're ready to start documenting experience. Don't forget to document your experience within those 8 months, or at least before 5 years. And if this one is very important, find firms that support you in your licensure path. Don't be afraid of asking those hard questions to the person who is interviewing you. Ask them how they can support you in gaining the experience that you need to gain to complete AXP. Ask them how they support you in taking the exams. Some firms pay for your exams, others don't, but they give you time off. They have different things, different ways they can support you. So don't be afraid of asking those questions. And connect with your architect licensing advisors. Can you just say hi to everyone?
Oh, yep. I'm Samina. My office is in the library, right when you walk in on the right. I'm here teaching most days, Monday through Thursday. You can also email me. We'll send out an email later should we send it? Okay, I'll say my email. It's AAU Samina, SAMEENA @gmail.com. So you guys can email me anytime with questions as well.
And NCARB works really closely with the architect licensing advisors to make sure that they have all the resources they need to be able to help you. So they are kind of a local contact. And of course, if you have any questions, you can also contact us with anything. We have an awesome customer relations team. I do want to mention something before you guys leave. Samina is your architect licensing advisor here at your school. She's the representative for your school. We are going to be looking with Samina, both of us, for a student licensing advisor. It's a similar role to her role, so helping your students around you. And we do have resources for you as an architect licensing advisor. We have an online forum. We have what else? Well, I completely forgot what we have, but we have webinars available. We have an online forum. We have, you have access to NCARB staff to help you answer the questions. So don't be afraid. We would train that person to be able to help the rest. And especially this year is a good year to become an architect licensing advisor because we meet every 2 years with all licensing advisors from around the country, students, firm advisors, or people who work at firms, educators, and we all get together to talk about training, to talk about licensure, how to help the rest. And NCARB has funding available, so NCARB pays for the students' hotel, flight. During the conference, you have most of your meals already covered, so it would be pretty cheap trip with a lot of information and great networking opportunities. So if you are interested, you can contact Samina and we can help you get set up. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone online. Thank you guys for staying here for the whole hour. Oh yeah, before we go.
So Dane is asking, can your supervisor be an engineer?
Yes, good. You were paying attention. You passed. Yes, it would be under experience setting O for other opportunities. The first one in the slide was, at the top was other licensed professionals. So an engineer, licensed engineer can sign off in your experience. And actually I said AXP is 3,740 hours. And you can work with your engineer for about half of it, which is 1,860 hours. Thank you.
I got one more question. Yes. There's always a debate on the text title of architects. What does NCARB recommend? RA, AIA, NCARB, architect. What is the proper or accepted title?
It is a good question, and I hate not having an answer for you. It depends on the state. Every state has a different regulation about it, and so that's something that you would need to check with your state board. The only thing that basically, because NCARB is a regulatory entity, our only stand is to make sure that you don't misrepresent yourself as an architect. But beyond that, the exact title depends on the licensing board.
I think that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, anything else? No? Thank you so much again for everyone for coming. And I'm going to stay around here if you have anything to follow up with.